Another one for Hans with a brilliancy there. Certainly not a move that is that impressive at this level with a pretty basic tactic. Rook takes and the bishop just moves with a discovered attack on the queen. But nevertheless, a brilliancy and another win, 12-3 for Hans Niemann, opening up a gap that is surely going to be insurmountable, Eric.
Talking about Hans. Ding wins 2 games in a row. A little bit of momentum. How does Hans respond? 2 straight wins. We're back to just a massive, massive lead.
Yeah, business as usual. We're now looking at these Catalan structures with usually the light squared bishops being exchanged at some point. Knight e5 is a really easy way to imagine that happening. White often plays queen c2, drop the queen back to make room for the knight.
Okay, Catalan, though, those positions, Ding doesn't mind playing. Just going for a small edge, some small squares. Maybe eventually you place your queen on b5. Okay, we want to recapture on d4 at some point. Black will probably get the knight to d5 at some point, but not a type of position where Ding should end up being down on the clock. So this is a game. Paying attention to the clock. These are easy positions for White. There's really zero excuse to end up in time trouble. Zero reason. Put the queen on b5, play easy moves. Easy move is like what? e3. Don't trade the queens. It's queen b5. Okay, you can trade, I guess. Bishop d6.
Yeah, I guess.
I even trading the queens for the match situation. I mean, White has the idea of maybe bringing the knight to d4 from f3, placing it on b5, but it doesn't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, at this stage, I think Hans is more than happy to take a position which you would even need to argue is a little bit worse for Black. And even if you win that argument, a slightly worse position at this point for Hans. Like, he's just trading every piece, and I don't think the endgame is that meaningful.
Rook c7, rook b8, then knight c5. Knight c5.
That was a very weird move, bishop f8. It's almost like
it was because
it was like a mouse slip or something.
So knight c5, bishop d6, you're in time to play rook b7. Knight c5, if you trade, you get some activity. Oh, that was a move.
I guess he wants to play knight c4, but Black can take and maybe just play b5 at the end. Knight d7, same thing, take and b5.
Rook d7, at least the rook has some stability there. Hans's goal is to trade off all the queenside pawns. If the pawns are on the king side, very solid. b5 accelerates that. You can take on a5, but after take, there's rook a8 in the end, and Black should recapture that extra pawn.
Yep, everything should disappear here. You can even start with rook a8 if you want. I'm not sure there's a big difference. Yeah.
It's not completely drawn because knights are tricky, but Ding's going to have to provoke a weakness somewhere here. I like knight b6. He wants to keep the rook on the a file, covering the back rank, I believe. Maybe knight f4? Rook e8?
Yeah, the knight can also slide back to f5, or to c5 rather. But
you'd love to get 2 knights attacking this, but easier said than done. Knight f4 runs into e5. And as pieces get traded, we get closer and closer to a draw.
Yeah, he's preventing knight c5 with that move, but now the knight's just going to retreat. Look, I can tell that Ding is playing this position with
king f3.
A little bit more confidence, right? This is his
this is a position. This is a position that you can still play for a win. It's even material, but what am I playing as White? I'm playing g4. f5 is a nice move by Hans. I want to disconnect the f5 pawn from the rest of Black's position. Okay, g4, creating an imbalance. The knight eventually can maybe find the f5 square I'm on.
Yeah. Some rerouting. It looks like a trade of rooks would be winning for Ding, so we won't be seeing
the d4 pawn is weak. and White's king is ready to take the center with king e4. So Ding can try to milk this. He doesn't need to find amazing moves. Build up, just play something.
This is one of the first games that we've seen, which has really been a longer game where there's some small advantage and, you know, the game can really continue, or you can imagine be played for quite some time. So we really get a chance to see potentially Ding's technique here, although Hans is looking comfortable.
You need to find a square for that knight, but in the meantime, defend e2. Worst case, maybe f3. Place the knight on e4.
Yeah.
f3 weakens the dark squares, but I'm trying to find active central squares. Ding needs to make sure he doesn't fall too behind on the clock. I think he's playing this quite well. Can you play rook d6 to play knight e4? Is it tough on the clock?
That's what he's thinking about. Kind of doing the same idea backwards, I think, with knight e4. If pawn takes on g4, then rook d6.
Yeah, so pawn takes g4, rook d6. I'm calculating just taking on f3 there.
Yeah. There's also rook f8 if you just need to move. That's a nice calculation, and
Yeah,
you were
this is what I was
highlighting that.
looking at because there's a rook takes e4 tactic. So king
Yeah.
g7.
Well, this is a draw offer, I think.
Yes, it is.
And there's going to be enough time for one more game to start.
Like a bit of pressure from Ding, but Hans, if you notice this clock, played quickly the entire time and never found himself in a very uncomfortable position.
If Hans wants the segment to end, he can. I was going to say he could have played maybe rook e3, but it looks like, we will maybe see the segment end. He has got more time on his clock. I don't necessarily think you're doing this necessarily to win, but remember, he could just wait, about a minute, so there's